They didn't set out to become legends. They were just starving farmers looking for food. But hunger turned them into the most feared warriors in history. So how did a cold, rocky land and a food crisis create one of the most terrifying empires the world has ever seen? Today, we're diving deep into the shocking truth of how desperation, not conquest, gave birth to the Viking Age. And trust me, what you think you know about the Vikings, it's only half the story. Let's rewind the clock back over 1,200 years. Picture Scandinavia, Norway, Sweden, and Denmark. It's not the Viking land of TV shows yet. Back then, it was a place where life was brutal, short, and cold. Not just bundle-up cold. We're talking bone-cracking winters, short summers, and soil that barely grew anything. You couldn't just plant a seed and expect a feast. The land was stingy, and the people, hungry, constantly. These early Scandinavians were farmers, mostly. They raised sheep, goats, and cows and tried their luck with barley or rye. But with only a few months of growing season, bad weather meant no crops. No crops meant no bread, no beer, no livestock feed, and pretty soon, no hope. Now imagine a few bad years in a row. Crops fail. Animals die. You're a father or mother with 4 kids. Your barns are empty. You're burning furniture to stay warm. What do? You look to the sea. At first, it was just small journeys. Hop across a fjord, trade with a neighbor, maybe fish a little further than usual. But then came a game changer, the Viking longship. Fast, sleek, shallow enough to sail up rivers, but sturdy enough for the open sea. With it, suddenly the world was within reach. And hunger became ambition. See, most people think Vikings were born warriors, but they were made warriors by necessity. That ship wasn't just their ride. It was their lifeline. And when trade wasn't enough, when neighboring tribes couldn't or wouldn't share, the Vikings didn't ask. They took. The first documented Viking raid happened in 793 AD at Lindisfarne, a quiet Christian monastery on the coast of England. It was peaceful, it was wealthy, and it was completely unguarded. The Vikings stormed in, slaughtered the monks, grabbed gold, books, cattle, and anything else they could carry, and vanished back into the fog. To the monks of Europe, it was the end of the world. To the starving farmers of Scandinavia, it was Tuesday. Now the idea spread like wildfire. Wait, they have what over there? Gold? Grain? Cows? And no warriors guarding it? Suddenly, thousands of young Scandinavian men were hopping into longships and sailing across oceans not just for food, but for opportunity. It wasn't just raiding. It was survival entrepreneurship. Some robbed, some traded, some settled. But all of it had one root: desperation. But let's slow down here for a second. Why couldn't they just fix the hunger at home? Why didn't they just figure out how to grow better crops? Great question, but it wasn't that simple. Scandinavia back then didn't have modern farming tools or advanced irrigation or even much iron to spare. And the climate wasn't getting better. The so-called Little Ice Age brought colder, harsher weather, longer winters, shorter summers. Even if you were the best farmer in the world, Mother Nature was rolling loaded dice against you. And when food is scarce, people fight. Not just with outsiders, but with each other. Scandinavia was tribal. Clans ruled everything. There was no king of all Norway, no Viking nation, just villages and warlords. If your neighbor had grain and you didn't, there was only one way to get it. This led to a brutal cycle: famine fighting famine. And it was the young men who got caught in the middle. If they stayed, they'd starve or be sent to die in local clan wars. But if they left, if they set sail for England, Ireland, or France, they might come home rich, or not come back at all. That's the gamble. And it worked. Over time, these raids weren't just food grabs. They were military campaigns. The Vikings grew smarter, faster, more organized. They figured out which monasteries had the most gold. They hit cities during festivals when no one expected an attack. They even began to demand protection money, what we now call Danegeld, from entire kingdoms. The English crown literally paid Vikings to go away. Imagine that. You're so terrifying that a whole nation pays you just to not show up. But still, back home, the famine never stopped. The land remained cruel, so more and more Vikings stopped returning. Instead of just raiding, they settled. In England, in Normandy, in Ireland, in parts of Russia. And wherever they landed, they brought their culture, their ships, and yes, their hunger. But it wasn't just food anymore. Now it was power. Once the Viking raids turned into settlements, the game changed. Families followed. Whole communities relocated. Farming began again. But this time on better land, with longer summers and richer soil. And the children of those once hungry warriors, they became kings. One of them, William the Conqueror. Yeah, he's a descendant of Vikings. So, let's recap the problem here. We're not talking about an empire built from glory. This wasn't Julius Caesar marching across Europe. This was famine, dirt floors, empty bellies, a hopeless winter where your only way to survive was to pick up an axe and build your future across the sea. And let's talk about that future. Once the Viking Age hit its peak around the 9th to 11th century, their impact was massive. They shaped the English language, changed royal bloodlines, and rewrote trade routes across Europe. They established Dublin in Ireland. They explored Iceland, Greenland, and even made it to North America, 500 years before Columbus. And none of that would have happened if the crops had just grown a little better back home. Funny, right? A little barley could have changed history. But let's dig deeper into the psychology of it all. What happens when you grow up knowing that life isn't safe or fair or easy? When your entire childhood is your parents scraping together every crumb of food, praying the winter isn't longer than usual. You become resourceful. You become hard. You become relentless. The Viking mindset wasn't born on the battlefield. It was born on farms with dying animals and frozen fields. It was a mindset of, if I don't act, I die. That's powerful, because once you have nothing to lose, you can't be controlled. And that terrified Europe. Vikings didn't follow traditional warfare rules. They didn't fight seasonally like medieval armies. They didn't march politely in formation. They appeared from nowhere, struck fast, and vanished before you could even mount a defense. They used rivers like highways. They attacked cities from the inside. They learned to speak local languages. They adapted. And as their settlements grew, so did their influence. They became traders, kings, mercenaries, and diplomats. Viking silver has been found as far as the Middle East. Their mythology and gods blended with local traditions. Odin and Thor weren't just in Scandinavia anymore. They were everywhere. And that's the climax of it all. Starvation led to exploration, exploration led to conquest, and conquest led to empire. But eventually, the Viking Age came to an end. By the 11th century, Europe caught up. Castles were built. Armies grew stronger. Christianity spread, and many Viking leaders converted. Trade replaced raiding, and slowly, the hunger that once fueled their fire faded. But the mark they left, unforgettable. So next time you picture a Viking, swinging an axe, storming a castle, yelling into the wind, remember, before he was a warrior, he was a farmer, a desperate man staring at an empty field. And the only thing more powerful than a man with a sword is a man with nothing left to lose. Watch the next video on screen to uncover another untold story from history's most misunderstood empires.